Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When Jesus saw the vast crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them, for they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. By now it was already late, and his disciples approached him and said, "This is a deserted place, and it is already very late. Dismiss them so that they can go to the surrounding farms and villages and buy themselves something to eat." He said to them in reply, "Give them some food yourselves." But they said to him, "Are we to buy 200 days' wages worth of food and give it to them to eat?" He asked them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they found out, they said, 5 loaves and 2 fish. So he gave orders to have them sit down in groups on the green grass. The people took their places in rows by hundreds and by 50s. Then, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven. He said the blessing, broke the loaves, and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them. They all ate and were satisfied. They picked up 12 wicker baskets full of fragments and what was left of the fish. Those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. The Gospel of the Lord.
Deacon Kevin would probably affirm the fact that sometimes working out a homily is like pulling teeth. And so this morning I went to one of my go-to sources because my pliers weren't big enough for my set of teeth. And just a big hint, every once in a while I go to this app, technology, not a problem, and I go to this app called Evangelizio. It provides you the daily readings, and it gives you a nice little meditation, often from the church fathers. And so in this case, I'm going to work a little bit from St. John Chrysostom. So I'm not giving you original material, but a little slant on old material from one of our great church fathers, St. John Chrysostom, who said, "The wise men paid homage to Christ's body, even when it was lying in a manger. They only saw Christ in a manger, yet they were moved. They saw nothing of what you see today." But now it's 2020, and so we're seeing with 2020 vision, you could say, assisted by the lenses that the church provides, the Holy Scriptures and her teaching in the tradition of the church fathers, and even in the teachings about the truths of the faith, that God has given us an invitation to see what He sees. And He sees people who need to be loved. God is love, St. John tells us this morning. He sent His only begotten Son and died on the cross because He loves us. That's what we see. The wise men never saw this coming. Maybe they did, but I don't think so. And God also sees the need to love one another because we're made to love and to be loved. And that has to be exchanged here on earth as it will be in heaven. And the one who is the best teacher on loving one another, of course, is Jesus. And you see Him in the gospel this morning, moved with pity. And His response to the pity that He was feeling was to immediately minister in, of all things, teaching. Because He sees that we need to be taught what true love is. He sees that we need to see the church working through the apostles, Because in this story of the feeding, Jesus simply says to the apostles, go feed them yourself. It's an affirmation of the apostolic church continuing to perpetuate the ministry of feeding the body of Christ with all his grace and mercy. Give them some food for yourself. And so that mandate of Jesus is continued in the Holy Mass, where the gospel is proclaimed and it becomes our sustenance. And from the altar, we see far beyond what all the wise men saw. We see the body, the blood, and the soul and divinity of Jesus Christ becoming present mystically through elements that some would only think is bread and wine. We see the body, the blood, the soul, and divinity of Christ, the bread of life that has come down from heaven, the body of Christ offered to us on the cross, to the altar, and in our mouths and in our hands. Now you see the vision of Jesus that finishes the Mass with a further mandate, not just to the apostles, but to all his disciples who would go to the cross, find him at the altar, hear him in his word, where he says, make disciples of all nations. And we sort of sum it up at the end of the Mass with a mandate that calls us to action after receiving Christ. Go and glorify the Lord by your life.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare,